I'm going to go ahead and do a quick mic check. Here we are. Yo. How is everybody doing? How are we doing? I was just making sure we had audio up and running. I still like doing the live streams. It's fun. I really enjoy doing these live streams. I don't know what it is exactly. I wonder if I feel a little bit less rushed. I can just sort of, I don't know, pace myself a little bit better. I think when I'm doing a podcast, I have this like 45-minute to an hour kind of goal in my mind, and I don't know, so I have that clock going. And live stream, maybe not so much. So welcome in. Welcome. If you are catching this after the live stream, thanks for being here. Again, as always, sharing this channel, liking these videos does really help things. I'm just going to unpack my year of making content on YouTube. I'm going to tell a bit of my story. I'm going to talk about things that I have learned. We are joined here, if you are watching this. I think I will release this later on, just in a podcast. So if you happen to be watching this, we are joined by a great cloud of witnesses. These are my thumbnails, which obviously needs some work, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we cover the plans for the future towards the end of this. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to kind of visualize where we have been and what we have done. And so, yeah, I'd tell a little bit of my story. So I'm glad to be doing this. I did have to change the time. I don't know that matters. It's a Wednesday afternoon. Most people are working. So doing this at 11 or doing it at, or not 11, doing it at 12 or 1 maybe doesn't make a whole lot of difference. I need to fix something on my screen here. And then I think I have all my bases covered. Yeah, I think I have all my bases covered here. So, welcome in. Let me know how you're doing. I do notice, though, that for whatever reason, my chat window, how could I do this? I could open up another window. I don't notice the chat unless multiple messages come through. So if one message comes through, I don't see it until like another message bumps it up. So there's something on my end that I need to fix. So I think what you're seeing, there should be one message from me that says that I am setting things up. But if I look at it in OBS, I don't see that. So let me know where you're coming from. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know how your year has gone, because this is going to be a year where I sort of unpack my experience. But of course, this channel is dedicated towards the idea that dialogue is still possible, even in an age of digital media and the siloing that takes place, the echo chambering that takes place on digital media platforms. I believe dialogue is still possible. I actually believe that dialogue could be even more potent in an age of digital media than maybe it ever has been. We saw this with pretty much any invention when it comes to communicating ideas, whether it be the written language, the alphabet, the scroll, the codex that became the book that ended up being instrumental in the inventing of the printing press, and eventually to the internet, and now sort of these digital forms of communication, all the while, and well, radio is in there too, but all the while we've had to sort of adapt to the tools that we're using in order to communicate things. And so it really is one of the driving forces behind this podcast is my belief in the power of dialogue, and in a world where maybe we're seeing dialogue fall away, I actually think we're in an environment that is rich for dialogue. It's just going to look a little bit different. And so as you look through the videos on this channel, I have attempted to create dialogues. I have attempted to join voices that maybe otherwise would not. This actually began with Joe Rogan. This whole process began with I don't honestly even know how I found Joe Rogan, his podcast. But I do remember the first episodes that really struck me were the Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson episodes. And my ears started to perk up there because they were so close to the biblical narrative of the flood. And yet every time they got too close to it, they sort of backed off. And like, well, we're not really talking about the Bible here. There's lots and lots of flood myths all throughout ancient history and yada, yada, yada. And on they go, trying not to sound like they're advocating for the biblical catastrophe. And so that podcast, though, got me thinking that dialogue was possible. Because the popularity of a Joe Rogan podcast was just, it's built around dialogue, and yet it's the most popular podcast out there. Why is it so popular? Well, it's just a conversation. I guess that's what podcasts are. I'm going to send out a note to my friend Sam. Now that I'm looking at these thumbnails, I remember Sam is one of our sort of dialogue partners. And I don't know what he's doing right now, but I'm going to send him a message and see if he wants to join us. I'm going to tell him I'm live right now talking about you. We'll see if he shows up. All right. So I just, as I was looking back, and this is part of live stream, I just sort of follow these little rabbit trails wherever they go, and it's the live stream, and we just sort of have to live with that. But there's Sam in one of those podcasts. But it was really hearing Joe Rogan that made me think, okay, dialogue is really possible, and I wanted to sort of be a fly on the wall in that podcast. I thought if I was there, sitting there with Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson and Joe Rogan, what could I say? Like, it's like almost, I just wish I could be there. And then I thought, well, I kind of can be there. I can take clips of Joe Rogan's conversation and then insert my own thoughts there. And I know that can be somewhat clunky when you listen to it because you're interrupting these people, and they don't know that you're interrupting them. Whereas in a normal conversation, at least you're interrupting people who know that they're being interrupted. But I know that that's some of the feedback that you get on channels like this, where it's like, stop interrupting. It's like, well, I did leave a link to the full podcast if you want. But this is commentary. This is dialogue. And so I titled the live stream today, Dialogue versus Reaction, Poetry versus Philosophy. These are going to be the themes that sort of guide us through this live stream today. I honestly don't know how long this will take. It will be at least an hour. Most of my live streams are an hour. That's at least a goal that I have. Similar to the podcast episodes, though I do try to keep the podcast episodes a little bit shorter. Some topics do require going over that hour, but I do try to keep the podcast episodes to about 45 minutes, and maybe that will change as things go. But when I set out at the beginning of it was really last year, it was December 28th, I posted my first video, and I thought I'll do this for a year and see what happens. And at the end of the year, do kind of exactly what I'm doing, which is kind of doing an analysis. But I'm going to do it on a live stream so that everybody can kind of join in on that analysis. You can tell me how bad my podcast is if you want to, or tell me if you learned anything, because I have learned a lot during this process. And in fact, my theology has, I think, matured doing this. I think I was craving an outlet for some of my ideas, and rather than writing another book, I just started a podcast. So here we are. Dialogue versus reaction, poetry versus philosophy. I was thinking of Joe Rogan and his conversation with Graham Hancock, and I think, started to take a few notes about that podcast. And so I noticed also that on YouTube, Christian YouTube needs some help. And what I found were sort of reaction videos. I'll get to this here in a little bit, but this gives you something to look at while I'm talking. I noticed that a lot of the content around Joe Rogan was reactionary. It was Christian pastor reacts, Christian reacts to Joe Rogan, talking about Jesus. But of course, this has been a theme throughout the years, is Jesus seems to be coming up on Joe Rogan. He seems to be coming up everywhere. If you talk to VanderKlay, he likes to bring up the Jesus smuggling that has been going on even in the secular world, and with these conversations with sort of new atheism and stuff like that. So you see that Jesus is sort of showing up on these podcasts, particularly Joe Rogan. And so I was sad, honestly, to find that the response from the Christian community online, particularly on YouTube, and maybe these are just the ones that get all the clicks because they're clickbaity, and YouTube is contributing maybe in some ways to the sort of echo chambering of these, like, Joe Rogan, and here's my Christian response, and it's debate, and it's argument, and it's your team versus my team. And of course, these versus videos do kind of, seems like people want tension. We're a story, we're people of story, and so we want tension. We want the verses. We want that kind of thing. We want to know that we're in on some sort of drama. But it was unfortunate for me to find the Christian response to Joe Rogan, because honestly, as I was listening to Joe Rogan, Graham, and some of these other podcasts, I just thought, I'm not that far. We're not that different. Obviously, we are fundamentally different in some areas of our belief, but there's a lot of common ground here. There's a lot of there's a lot of material here with which we could build a bridge to a better conversation, a more rich dialogue than just reaction. And so that's my goal here is dialogue sort of versus reaction. So you see how I did that? That's poetry, right? That's narrative, right? I'm telling you, we don't need to do dialogue versus reaction while I'm doing dialogue versus reaction. But sorry, I find that funny. I realize it probably isn't. So that was the setting for this podcast. The hope, and what's funny is, it was Joe Rogan who gave me the idea that dialogue was possible. It was actually Christian YouTube that discouraged me from this idea, because what you see is just reaction, not dialogue, but reaction. And so I set out to build that bridge in the back of my mind, thinking there's something going on this Joe Rogan podcast. Now, maybe I'll unpack this here a little bit, because I do want to explain why I named this podcast Strange Theology. But in some of the sort of this past year, the high points and the low points. But it was the Adam Curry, Joe Rogan episode that tipped me over the edge and said, okay, I've got to make a video about this. Now, gosh, where was I when I made this video? Okay, I was in this room. Okay. Maybe one of the things on the list for next year, I'll write this down, is a better backdrop for the attic studio. I'm in my sort of have a finished attic, and so better thumbnails is on the list, and better background is now on the list. Thank you for helping me with that. But it was we had basically just moved in a few months ago to this house. Life was crazy, but I'm listening to Adam Curry share his faith to Joe Rogan, share his conversion story with Joe Rogan, and I just thought, okay, this has become it's like that tipped me over the edge of like, is there something going on the Joe Rogan podcast? Is God maybe doing something with the Joe Rogan podcast God's up to something on the Joe Rogan podcast. And yes, God is always up to something, but that's where I jumped in. And for me, let me see if I can share this. No, I switched to live stream. Let me see. Well, that's annoying. That's my live stream. So let me pull that away. I wanted to show you guys just kind of the, I don't know, kind of what has been happening. And I had this subscriber count pulled up a second ago, and I thought that this was, it's worth noting that other people agreed with me, because I made that Joe Rogan and Adam Curry video, and I don't have any social media presence other than this YouTube channel. I didn't share this with anybody. I didn't post it anywhere. I just made a video it was this video right here. I had made 3 videos, and I got, I think I got views, but I didn't get any subscribers. This was just me setting the foundation for the channel with a few voices that I thought were very important. One is just about God, the other is about Jesus, and the other is Michael Heiser, who is a voice that does show up on this podcast frequently, and I hope to kind of I wouldn't say that I'm sort of like dedicating this channel, but I hope that this channel can be in sort of the spirit of Michael Heiser, and kind of carry on some of his work, though I'm ill-equipped to do such a task. I'm not as equipped as Michael Heiser was for the task. He was the man of the hour, and I really wish that he had been on the Joe Rogan podcast. Everybody wants William Lane Craig to be on Joe Rogan, and maybe I'll share my thoughts on that here in a little bit when we start talking about apologetics. But I posted, so I had these 3 videos up, sort of setting the foundation for a podcast called Strange Theology, and I made the Adam Curry video, and it was just, and I don't know what I'm doing. Didn't share it with anybody. And this is where, and it seems silly, but this is where I went, okay, January 27th, 3 people subscribed to this channel. And I went, okay, there's other people out there like me. There's other people out there who see, and it was all from the Adam Curry video. There are other people out there that see what's happening, not just with Joe Rogan, but really in the arena of dialogue as it pertains to podcasts and digital media, and just that there's something going on. And I don't know that we have quite put our finger on exactly what it is, but I think it is very close to how the printing press was utilized during the Reformation. And I know, depending on which side of the Reformation you fall under, you might take that to be a negative thing. But similar to that, I think we're in an age where God wants to reveal something of himself. He's going to reveal that glory through his church. And the question is, how is the church going to utilize the tools that are in front of her? Because as much as this podcast has been built around this A.W. Tozer idea that they're what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us, and the Francis Schaeffer idea of there's a flow to history and culture rooted in the way people think, and I think it's rooted in the way people think about God. There is another piece to this story, which is we, as people, we shape our tools for a particular task, for a particular moment in history. And then those tools shape us. And where are we when it comes to digital media? This tool that we have invented for mass communication. And yet, isn't it highly influential, more so than maybe any other tool that we have ever invented? And so we are at a very particular and very interesting point in history, and I think we will unpack that more, not just in this live stream, but just as we go on to the next year. Because my conclusion at the end of this year was that I will continue to do the Strange Theology Podcast. I will make a few changes. A lot of this year has been experimentation. And I think we will double down on the things that work for me. And we will let go of some things that maybe don't work. Shorts is going to be one of those. I may make a short here and there, but I will make significantly fewer shorts. And I will invest more time into long form podcasts and live streams and things like that. So just, be aware there are going to be some things that change. So with that being said, I am going to move in. Let's see. Why did I name it Strange Theology? That's where we're at. Okay, good. I'm glad I have some notes that are keeping me accountable, which is good. I just want to make sure as well. Okay, I think we're looking good. I didn't, again, I don't see certain things on my end. So I kind of psych myself out, and I think that maybe I realize I'm live streaming to myself for the most part. My channel is pretty small, and that is great. And actually, I prefer it this way. I want these first few. I don't know how many live streams I've done, but I want these first few to be kind of anonymous. And I've really enjoyed it. So actually, I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Actually 9 live streams. That's, and again, it's a way for me to, it does kind of create more content that doesn't require me to do any editing and stuff like that. So it's a little more efficient. I do this part-time, and so, not part-time, but, I need to sort of have an efficient use of my time. And so live stream is one of those ways I can do it. But if you are here, hit me up in the chat because again, it's easier for me to know that, one, my audio is good, or two, that I'm actually live when I have people chatting in the comments. So even if you catch this after the fact, let me know, because I'm not using my headphones. If I don't want to play my audio, because then it would echo. So I do feel a little bit vulnerable. So any feedback that you give me would be great, and I'll make those adjustments. So and I think I already did say that my family's home, and so if you hear a child screaming for snacks, fair warning there. So the name Strange Theology, and I realize this is a funny one, because I'll talk a little bit more about Christian YouTube throughout this live stream, but it's a nod to Michael Heiser, who we've already talked to, but he has a book called The World Turned Upside Down: Finding the Gospel in Stranger Things. And as I sort of pressed into Michael Heiser, and it was because of this question of Nephilim, and it was because I was teaching Old Testament to my students, and because my students are very curious, and they should be, and this is middle schoolers and high schoolers, I knew that I wanted to be faithful to the text. I don't want to soften the edges of the strange content within the Bible. I don't want to water down Scripture for them. I don't want to skip over Genesis chapter 6 because it's difficult. I want to make my students aware of that, so that when they become adults, they're not coming across Genesis 6 and going, why did my church never teach me about this really strange thing that's going on? I just want to be faithful to the text. And I knew that that was going to be a point of curiosity for my students. And so I really wanted to sort of handle it faithfully. And that's where I found Michael Heiser. It was looking into the Nephilim more seriously and how I interpret Genesis 6. And of course, if you followed this channel, you know I've done several videos on that. And I feel like I have grown in that area a lot. So a lot of credit to Michael Heiser. Michael Heiser gave me, and I think other people, but gave me permission to do theology boldly, courageously, to follow the text where it's leading, even though there's strangeness there. So to do theology boldly, even if that means doing it unconventionally, and even if that means not accepting maybe the conventional interpretation, maybe we're using that conventional interpretation as like, hey, I can always fall back on this. I'm not abandoning the work that good theologians have done throughout the generations, and yet, if I was to do that, I would still be thinking that the Nephilim were sort of this Cain and Seth, the lineage of Cain and this lineage of Seth, because that's kind of what I was hearing at the time. Now, I was in a school called the School of Biblical Foundations and Missions many years ago, where we did talk about this. And that was one place where I first felt like I had permission, that there was mystery in Scripture and that was going to be okay. That we don't have to be so committed modern people to the point where every question needs to be answered and we have to have everything figured out. It's getting a little bit chilly in here, so I'm buttoning up a little bit. And have all the questions answered. When we come across things that might be mysterious, it's okay for them to dwell in that realm of mystery as we sort of meditate on them. And so my experience with Michael Heiser really did push me into that realm where I felt like I could courageously and sort of boldly follow the text, even if that meant being weird. And so I did actually, I began to tell my students, there was times when I felt like we were going off the map of conventional theology, and I just started telling them, okay, this is Pete's strange theology. This isn't conventional. Certainly talk to your parents about this. Certainly there's more dialogue to be had here, but this is sort of strange theology 101 from Pete, and this is where we're going. And I would sort of give them this sort of strange theology warning whenever because we didn't want to jump over the strangeness of the Bible. We wanted to press into it. And then what we find is that actually as you press into some of that strangeness, a whole kind of world of theology actually opens up to you. You wouldn't think of it, and I shared this on Twitter, X, having studied the Nephilim in this Genesis 6 passage and having that carry me all the way into the book of Revelation and how John uses Old Testament as he's writing the book of Revelation, it really has brought me to the place of understanding the victory that we have in Christ over the true horrors of the world and the true victory that I have over sin in my life. So it has really enriched my relationship with the Lord. If I had skipped over Genesis 6, I would have less of an understanding of those two things. And so I think I would be ill-equipped. I would be less equipped to meet the world that is in front of me, enriched by sort of the ancient wisdom of the Bible, because the Bible is an ancient text, and we do well to sort of remember that. And maybe that's where a lot of the mystery comes from. But so I went with the name Strange Theology to sort of pay homage to Michael Heiser in that, and also to acknowledge that I'm going to be finding theology in places like Joe Rogan podcast and Russel Brand and Jordan Peterson, although Jordan Peterson is maybe even a little bit more conventional these days. A lot of Christians feel that Jordan Peterson is safe, whereas maybe Joe Rogan is not. I mean, the 8th video that I published on this channel was a conversation between Joe Rogan and Blair White. I'm not sure how many of the Christian YouTubers out there have engaged with that conversation, because Blair White is a trans person and Joe Rogan is obviously not he's like he's not really an atheist, but he's certainly not favorable to Christianity, and so they, sort of conventional Christian YouTube wouldn't touch that interview. I felt like it needed to be dealt with. I felt like the underlying part of that conversation was that both Joe Rogan and Blair White acknowledged the human need for transformation. And yet they also seem to stumble through how to access that transformation. And so we have to sort of lean into maybe these places where we're finding strange theology. So on one hand, the name of the channel is an ode to Michael Heiser and sort of bold theology. And on the other, it's an acknowledgement that you actually do find theology in strange places that you might not have looked for. If you can go into those places like a good philosopher, and maybe that's where sometimes theologians maybe are bad philosophers, philosophers are bad theologians. This is what Plato is encouraging us to do through Socrates. He goes down, this is in the Republic. It's behind me, but it would be lame to go get it. He goes down, he descends into the Piraeus, and he goes and he says he wants to pay homage to the gods, but he also wants to observe how they put on the festival. Well, if you're a true worshiper, you're not going down to observe how they put on the festival. That's a philosopher. A philosopher does that. A person who goes down for worship goes down for the purpose of worship, and they're not necessarily trying to think through and analyze how they put on the festival. A philosopher thinks through and analyzes how they put on the festival. And I think sometimes we need to just do that. We need to go into the Joe Rogan podcast, listen to what they're saying with a good sort of philosophical mindset, knowing that we're about to do theology still, and that philosophy and theology should not be, diametrically opposed to each other. In fact, I think good theology brings us to good philosophy. And so, we have to engage in that. And so I've been impressed at what I have found through this process. And so the Adam Curry episode really sort of set the fire. And so I'm just going to quickly sort of go through that. So that's why the channel is called Strange Theology. I realized that probably I probably will end up on one of these lists of like YouTubers that you should avoid because it is kind of scary to wander into some of these three Christian YouTube channels you need to unsubscribe from now. Yes, okay, we'll get to this here in a little while, just sort of the cult of Christian YouTube. But so yeah, okay, so we're gonna Strange Theology. What it does is it probably means that YouTube doesn't know what to do with this channel, and I'll get to an illustration of this near in sort of the next sort of chapter of what I have planned for this live stream. YouTube doesn't know what to do with this channel because am I a Joe Rogan Reacts channel? Am I a Christian theology channel? What the heck? What is this thing? And probably Christians don't know what to do with it because they're looking at it going, "What? Well, I don't want my theology to be strange. I want my theology to be conventional. I want it to be very safe, and I want it to be very understandable, and I don't want there to be any mystery to it." And so that's where, unfortunately, we have inherited a lot of Enlightenment rationalism and rationalism. I'm a rational person. I believe in rationality, but this rationalism, this emphasis of human reason to the point where we think we can have it all figured out, and we just don't. And I'm going to acknowledge that. And so what I actually do really rely on this community because I think that YouTube often doesn't know what to do with this channel. The algorithm can help us and does help us, but really the community of Strange Theology is the algorithm. As you guys share these, if you come across an episode that you like and you share it with your friends, that is the thing. You comment on those so that we can continue good dialogue. This is one of the reasons I didn't go into apologetics, but again, that's kind of the next chapter of this live stream. Commenting, liking, sharing, and then watch time. If you're sitting down doing the dishes, if you're on, excuse me, if you're going on a road trip or something like that, just plug in a podcast, plug in the playlist. I've got all kinds of playlists set up. So that's really where, again, I could use your help if you like the channel, help the channel out and share it with people, because I think there's a lot more people out there that need to hear be a part of these conversations. I think there's a hunger, and I think we have sort of proven that. I have not really shared this channel. I've done a little bit since I started, particularly when, like, you go through these dry spells and you're like, man, my channel's not really growing. Maybe I'm off, and you start to kind of like, you get a little bummed out, because you might have gotten a spike from one video or something like that. And so I think I have shared it on Facebook and a little bit, but I just don't do other forms of social media very well. And so YouTube is really my platform. X has become a little bit more recently, but look at there's 1,222 people as of right now who have subscribed to this channel, who have said, yeah, I'm okay to, if my theology is a little strange, I'm okay to do theology boldly, even if it means not doing theology conventionally. I want to share this with these are the conversations I'm having with my friends. Just like the conversation that I had with my students about the Nephilim that led to this whole thing. So this, to me, is incredibly encouraging, because this is, for the most part, organic growth. Again, I don't have a platform other than this. And so you guys are a part of making this happen. One of the goals that I had, or one of the questions that I had in the back of my mind was, would this channel get 1,000 subscribers in a year? And we've got there, which is awesome. So we're just going to see where it goes from there. And so yeah, thank you. If we're like 40 minutes into this podcast. I think I got through the introduction there. I'll quickly move through just, again, how this year has sort of been transformational for me. So Adam Curry episode, that was 10 months ago. And but again, it was the Graham Hancock kind of dialogue that I thought was interesting. And then an interesting thing happened. I've touched on a few other things, but the ideas around simulation theory started to pop up. I did a Timcast IRL video on this. It came up again in the Joe Rogan, Eric Weinstein video. It also came up in, I guess this was another Timcast episode, but this was Michael Knowles again on Timcast. And then the Y-Files became one of our interlocutors, one of our dialogue partners. And that was 6 months ago. So about halfway through this podcast, I stumbled upon the Y-Files episode on simulation theory, and it just really took me back but I was already thinking about C.S. Lewis's space trilogy and realizing that a lot of people talk about simulation theory because they don't have a biblical cosmology. And even Christians don't have a biblical cosmology. We have a naturalistic cosmology, and we think that stars are just stars. And they are. Stars are stars. But they're also more than stars. And so we need to sort of acknowledge that. Otherwise, the whole story of Jesus' birth and, the star, it literally says that the star was the thing that led them. Now, was it just that they were doing the math? Maybe they were. That's part of it. But we also know from other parts of Scripture that these stars pour forth speech night after night. They declare the glory of God. It says that they speak. Okay, so you could take that as just sort of nice poetic language, which it probably is. But is it also indicating that there's more to the natural world? I think so also. And so we've come through this whole thing with simulation theory. And this is a great illustration of how this tool of digital media, this ability that I have through digital media to just sort of talk with you guys and share my ideas with you guys, get your feedback, has been transformational. Because this really started to unpack my understanding of biblical cosmology. So we've already talked about this with the idea of the giants in Genesis 6. So the tool itself is helping to shape my theology, I think, in a good way. And I think my hope is that it's more that dialogue is helping me shape my theology. But we came all the way through this idea of just simulation theory to hopefully coming to, and actually right after that I did a Michael Heiser Star of Bethlehem video, kind of indicating some more biblical cosmology and why that topic is important for people to sort of recapture. But it was transformational for me. And so, I have to say, let me see if I can get here. I was on to the this. So the C.S. Lewis space trilogy, I think, has gotten a lot of press recently. It's really when you look at shorts like this, it's really unfortunate. But I did a short. Let me see when. This is probably gonna. Okay, I think you guys can hear this, but I was just trying to figure out when I posted this because YouTube doesn't actually tell me. Description. February 12th. February 12th, 2023, the Strange Theology Podcast was on to the C.S. Lewis space trilogy, okay? So we were there first, guys. Well, maybe not first. I mean, obviously, C.S. Lewis wrote that book a long time ago. But a lot of people recently have been like, man, C.S. Lewis, that space trilogy, we really need to rethink that. Hey, February 12th, for those of you who were here, you caught sight of this, that C.S. Lewis is saying something in this space trilogy that really truly needs to be said. And part of it is just that the world is more than just what the naturalists want to tell us. The world is a battle. I'm going to say that. Yeah, the world, there's a battle going on that we need to be aware of, and it is a cosmic one. You can look at Ephesians 6. It's a battle of world forces, spiritual forces, and we needed to take that seriously. And I just thought it was really insightful that C.S. Lewis basically says these people, these naturalists, these humanists, these people who are looking at the world as though it's just matter and there's no spiritual realm, they're engaging with the spirits without knowing it. And that's even more dangerous than if you were to maybe be duped into the belief in spirits that don't exist. So it's like that's the fear a lot of atheists have. It's like, I don't want to be duped into this woo-woo fairy tales. Well, it's better to be duped into woo-woo fairy tales that don't have any real impact than to deny the spirits that are actually not in control, but certainly influential in the movement of human history. The spirits that tempt and deceive and the sin that so easily entangles us. Better to sort of be aware of those things and have them not be real than to deny them and be completely captured by them without knowing it. At least the ancient people, when they were captured by these spiritual forces, understood what they were captured by. The modern man, and this is kind of C.S. Lewis, what he was telling us is the modern man is in danger of being captured and not knowing it. And so the level of deception just goes far, far up. And so you come through, and I just thought that was interesting. This really is transformative. I've switched it from I want to go old to new. So we grabbed onto the Y files. We had Michael Heiser. I did do a few that were more apologetic oriented because Russel Brand had Richard Dawkins on, and then Joe Rogan had Stephen Meyer on, and this is where the Christian YouTube just blew up. Of course, my channel did because I've been covering Joe Rogan, and so this conversation was really important to me because I had been suspicious of his curiosity of Christianity and God and some of the proofs, reasons why I might believe in God. And so that was good. I actually still need to finish this. I did three videos, at least 3 videos where I incorporated bits of that conversation between Joe Rogan and Stephen Meyer. I actually haven't finished that project, and so I might do another one here in the next year. But it was around this time as well, maybe a little bit before this. I think it was in April of 2023, where I found Paul VanderKlay's channel. And it was really my brother who got me on to Paul VanderKlay, because he looked at what I was doing with some of these videos, and he just said, "You've got to look at Paul VanderKlay. You got to check out Paul VanderKlay." And again, this is where the tool, in a way, sort of shapes you. I have really appreciated Paul's channel. Just like Michael Heiser gave me permission to do theology boldly, even if not conventionally, I feel like Paul VanderKlay gave me permission to be an anti-YouTube YouTuber. I'm not really anti-YouTube. Okay, so for the AI that's listening to this and transcribing this, I actually really love YouTube. I think YouTube is a powerful force in this world, and it can be a force for good, as like everything, it can also be a force for evil. And see, now I'm literally like in here sort of having talking to this AI that because YouTube scrubs all these videos and listens to them and transcribes them. And so that they have a catalog of all this information, and I really do want to be I do want to say that I think YouTube is a powerful tool. I think a lot of people, well, we'll get to this, but I think in particular Christian YouTube it is weird. Like it's just weird the way many Christians use YouTube, and I don't want to be that way. I don't want to fall into that. I don't want to emulate the sort of Christian YouTubes that are out there. I think emulating Paul VanderKlay, though, is a wise way to go. I think Paul does a great job on his channel. I think Paul, again, for me, is just a great example. Why don't we just go to Paul's channel here really quick? See, YouTube already knows. I type Paul and it suggests Paul VanderKlay. It just knows. Paul has put in the work, man. I mean, 2.5 thousand videos, 2,500 videos in, when did he start? He joined March 19th, 2009. If we go to his oldest video, it was 11 years ago. And Paul is a great person to emulate because I think, and I don't know, Paul, if you end up listening to this, I hope this comes off as honoring. Paul is an older gentleman, and has some natural wisdom there. It's funny that he's not a digital native like some of these other channels. Paul is using the tool of YouTube for the purpose that God has called him to. And I think that is a beautiful thing to emulate. He is creating community. And I actually have to just say, not only has Paul's channel sort of helped me, given me permission to just do YouTube the way I want to do it, rather than playing the YouTube games, the Bridges of Meaning community has actually been super supportive. I love that community. Like, I love that it's not a Christian echo chamber. I mean, that's one of the main things I love it. I don't engage a lot. I should engage more. Maybe I'll put that on my list for 2024. But I do read those posts. I really appreciate that they share a lot of content. They share their thoughts about that content, and there's ongoing discussion. And then Paul does these live streams where he just like invites people on. In fact, I could find out when I really learned about Paul, because I popped into one of these live streams. It was shortly after I had found his channel. I popped into one of his live streams. It might have been this one. I watched this one all the way through. It was 7 months ago. Anyway, just shout out to Paul. If you follow this channel, I did put all of these channels in a community note. So if you want to look at any of them that I'm looking at, you'll find that community tab on the channel, and it is right here. If you go down to read more, there is a list of all the channels that we've interacted with. I'm not sure why there's a space between Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. Yeah, so shout out to all these. So Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, Michael Heiser, Russel Brand, Paul VanderKlay, The Y-Files, The Sean Ryan Show. I've only done one video with Sean Ryan, but his testimony video is really good as well. Recently been listening to Haunted Cosmos, been aware of the What Your Pastor Didn't Tell You channel, and partly because I like the that approach that I talked about earlier on in this video, which is as we read through scripture, it's like, I don't want to skip over these hard parts, so there is this trend in sort of modern evangelical Christianity, maybe I'm being unfair there, but to sort of, it's like we tell the story of Noah in Sunday school, and yet we don't move on to the last part of that story where things get really weird and Noah's like drunk and naked and his kid like molests him or something, like weird stuff. And it's like, okay, naturally, we're not going to share that with kids. But at some point, you got to pull the curtain back and let, young disciples of Christ understand that the Bible is filled with interesting things. And so I feel like this channel, What Your Pastor Didn't Tell You, is kind of in that spirit. And then I'm going to talk about Daily Dose of Wisdom and this channel, Jaden Forrest, here in just a second. I'm going to look at my notes and make sure I am still on par here. But yeah, just really enjoy Paul VanderKlay. I'll get into getting distracted by this fuzz right here. So sorry about this noise, but I'm going to deal with that because it's actually distracting me. Yeah, okay. Distraction over. I'm going to share a little bit about the future of this podcast in 2024. And one of those is I want to do more interviews. So, if anybody knows how to connect with Paul, let me know. I would love to have Paul on this channel. I would love to jump into a randos conversation. I sort of I've tried to get into those live streams. Sometimes there's a lot of people there, and I'm in the chat. But it's not worth sort of jumping in. But I'd love to chat with Paul more just on topics like this, particularly sort of how we shaped this tool, and now maybe this tool is shaping us. But more interviews will come in the year. But let's look at this, and on that idea of Christian YouTube, and on the idea of sort of how these tools shape us. This is actually, I've shared a lot of the encouragement. So if you're just getting to this part of the video, hopefully you hear that this year has been filled with a lot of encouragement. It's been filled with a lot of positive things. I really didn't know what I was doing a year ago. I had an idea. I felt called. I felt pushed by God to do something. And then I just sort of did that, knowing that I would learn along the way. And it has been awesome. It has been transformational for me, and I think it will continue to be. And I just love the idea that we are building a community around dialogue about meaningful things. And so again, I'll take another opportunity to just say, I read the comments. And actually, one of the things that has been discouraging is that YouTube will notify me, and you can see if you're watching, like there's a notification here, did I get a comment? I really, I cherish these moments where I get to read people's comments. What I've also noticed is that YouTube doesn't share all the comments with me when I'm in the YouTube studio. I actually have to go to the video, and then I realize, people have been commenting on this comment. So maybe at me at Strange Theology in the comment, and I think I'll get a notification because of that. But I really encouraged by comments and dialogue, but then I sort of found it discouraging that when I went to those videos, as I've sort of recapped the year, I'm like, I missed a bunch of this conversation when my heart is to engage in it. And so, yeah, I'm going to get a drink of water. I'll move on to this next section here. What are we looking at? This is me sharing my one discouragement. This is the one discouraging thing that I have come across in this year. Okay, now I see my own chat, which tells me I got a message in the chat, but I can't see it. So I need to figure out what my settings are. So hold on. I see that I got a comment, but I can't read it. So, yo, what's up, Chad? Yeah, YouTube is weird. Well, and weird with the comments, and I'll get to this. I'll get to this in a second when I talk about apologetics, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to stick to theology, even strange theology, and not do and not go into the apologetics, because if you look at this channel, this is okay. Let me do a social experiment here. Look at this channel. Maybe take some mental notes. That just picture this channel in your mind. Now look at this channel. Okay, did you notice? So if you're watching this, if you're listening to this after the fact, we're looking at two different YouTube channels. But if you look at their thumbnails, they look exactly the same. Now, one of these channels has been in existence for quite some time. It's called Daily Dose of Wisdom. It's a Christian YouTuber, and he does a lot of apologetics. And if you want a Christian YouTube channel, you should do apologetics, because I think YouTube, the algorithm, just sort of, it has a category for sort of Christianity when it comes to apologetics. It's like, okay, the algo understands Christian apologetics. I don't know how the YouTube algorithm looks at my channel, because I've kind of stayed away from that. Partly because if you read some of the comments of these videos, it doesn't create good dialogue. Excuse me. I don't feel like it's I feel like whenever I have these inconvenient burps, it's some form of spiritual warfare. That's just me. Okay, it's just me. I'm gonna share my strange ideas because I'm trying to get out this thought, and every time it comes, it's just like burp. Okay, and now I'm totally distracted. I don't remember what I was saying. You could, and my heart behind starting the channel was to create dialogue. I share that at the very beginning. That's the heart behind this channel. And apologetics, unfortunately, within the sort of modern, and again, I'll just go ahead and say modern evangelical church, knowing full well that I might be miscategorizing, is really just argument. It's debate. It's William Lane Craig. I really like William Lane Craig, but he's got just sort of very tight rhetoric, and he's obviously very brilliant. But there's not a lot of dialogue when it comes to that type of apologetics, that type of rhetoric. Relationships are the best apologetics, is what Chad is saying. Yeah, 100%. And I do apologize. I'm sort of become self-conscious about the fact that I scratched my neck, and my neck is all red now. So if you're watching this and I keep looking over, it's just, sorry, that's another one of those sort of, maybe this tool is shaping you type of maybe spiritual warfare types of things. But yeah, so if you're listening to this on the podcast later, I should have just said nothing and kept going. But for those of you who are watching are like wondering what's going on, it's me having an internal battle with my own sort of insecurities about my appearance. And so I don't want to foster, and I could do a Christian YouTube channel that's focused on apologetics, and I could try to really change the culture around that. But I'd rather just do a theology channel. And if apologetics comes up, I want to handle it in my own way. But hopefully by the time this channel deals with any sort of apologetic, like really just like strictly apologetics content, we have built a culture that exists within the realm of the comment section or whatever it might be that would allow us to still have good dialogue. But I think if you start with apologetics, I don't know that good dialogue follows, because there's a lot of trolls on the internet that are just going to show up. They're going to be armed to the teeth with their own ideology. They're not trying to be convinced by anything that you say. They just want to stir up controversy. And so this I think is a good channel. I don't watch a lot of his stuff, but I am aware of this channel, Daily Dose of Wisdom. And you can see he's got nearly 500,000 subscribers. He's been at it for a while. He's got nearly 200 videos. This man has put in the work. Bravo to you. You're in a sphere. Wow, that took a while to come out. You're in a sphere that I personally may not want to go into with as far as Christian apologetics is concerned, even though I have a background in Christian apologetics, even though I've taught Christian apologetics. Bravo to you. A lot of popular Christian YouTube channels are this way. They kind of deal with the questions and the answers and the response, and that goes back to the beginning of, do we want dialogue or reaction? Do we want poetry or philosophy? Do we want to build echo chambers, or do we want to meet around the town square, around the fireplace, and have good conversation? Yeah. No worries, Chad. Thanks for the comments. It would be easy if so I've got a setting that I need to work out, because right now I'm not seeing the comments really as they come in. So I've actually had to join from my phone to see your comments, and I do appreciate them. So that's the only thing, is I'm sitting here looking at my phone instead of looking at my screen, which is right above me. But yeah, I love it. And I don't, depending on where you jumped in, we were talking about Paul VanderKlay's channel a second ago and just what an anomaly it is. And maybe anomaly is the wrong word, but there's a whole culture around Paul's channel that I do feel is way more supportive than maybe some of these other sort of, sort of just Christian YouTube channels that deal with apologetics. And a lot of that has to do with Paul himself and the people around that. Definitely looking forward to chatting with you more, Chad, on your channel. And I've been kind of looking at what you've been up to, and it's been fun, man. So again, I just love the bridges of meaning. There's a whole community, and that's the point. Could this tool, this digital media tool, be a force for good in the world for building community and dialogue? I think so. And even these channels are great. This, Christian apologetics, it's great. It's necessary. But here's the funny thing. Do you remember that other channel I just showed you? It looks exactly the same. This is Jaden Forrest, and Jaden, if you ever do come across this live stream, I really hope that you take this as an encouragement, and not as some sort of, I'm not trying to be negative at all. I just noticed, because this video, the video of when Ben Shapiro got humbled by Jesus, and that's where a lot of these apologetics channels, it's the verses, Ben Shapiro versus William Lane Craig, and stirs up controversy and gets clicks and whatever. It is what it is. It was this video that came across my home screen. That got me thinking. I was like, oh man, this video, if you notice it, and maybe here, I'll just click on it and it's gonna play. Yeah, it's gonna play an ad, which is unfortunate. I'll mute that ad. Yeah, just bear with me as this sort of plays. But it was we'll give Jaden another click. Don't renew. We're gonna pause. But it was the fact that this video was 5 days old that caught my attention. Because the video itself has 716,000 views right now, as of 10 days ago. The original Daily Wire interview that he's commenting on, and look at Jaden. I don't know how old Jaden is, but he's no Paul VanderKlay when it comes to age. Let's just say that. Jaden, I think, is in college, maybe graduated from college recently. I don't know. But we're going to just go out on a limb and say Paul VanderKlay has some years on Jaden here. And bravo to Jaden. This video is getting hundreds of thousands of views. And when I noticed his channel, he had 9,000 subscribers. He currently has nearly 15,000 subscribers. You look at the original interview on Daily Wire from 4 years ago, it has 736,000 views. So Jaden's video in 10 days is about to surpass the original video. And I just thought to myself, what the hell is going on here? I've never heard of this kid, because when I saw that thumbnail, I thought it was Daily Dose of Wisdom. I thought, oh, this is his style. But you can see, well, when it comes up in your home screen, you can see the channel icon, and it was a different channel icon. And the video was only 5 days old, but it had hundreds of thousands of views. And I just went, okay, what is going on? And because I obsess about things like this, I just had to go in and figure it out. And it bugged me for a while until I realized, oh, that's where I've seen this before. It's Daily Dose of Wisdom. And this guy's put in the work. He's got 200 videos. He's got 436,000 subscribers. Jaden's putting in some work, but it's funny. Here, check this out. So think about it like this. Some of the popular videos on Daily Dose of Wisdom are from this Ben Shapiro. Look at right here. From this Ben Shapiro and William Lane Craig interview. And look, he's in the corner. He's got this little box. It's so funny. And Jaden, again, please take this with a grain of salt. This is the world we live in. Okay, there's no shade here. You do you, man. But it's here's what it is. It's so funny, right? I'm sorry, this is going to be a little bit nerdy. Daily Dose of Wisdom is taking content from Daily Wire and trying to make his own content on it. I don't know how these guys get away with it, because the middle part of this video, This is a 15-minute video. I think he does a few minutes on the front end. He comments for a section, but he's using huge clips from Daily Wire, like nearly like 5 minutes or more, maybe 10 minutes. I don't know how that stays within fair use, but hey, whatever. This is just me. So here's Daily Dose of Wisdom. And of course, I do this. I use other people's content. That's part of me trying to form dialogue. And so I'm paying attention to this as he's using Daily Wire to make his own content. And then basically there's something going on here. This is like Plato's cave. And then Jaden is taking that content and making his own content. And it's like somehow we've got to make our way out of the cave here. But again, is this the tool shaping us? We shape our tools. We shaped this tool for mass communication, and now this mass communication tool is shaping us. So much so that we have a channel that is basically a copy of a channel that is using other people's content. So now this content has been recycled, and now, of course, I'm probably going to take a clip from this Ben Shapiro and William Lane Craig interview and do my own content. So if you notice this popping up on the channel in the next few months, you were here first, okay? Because now I've watched the Daily Wire interview, and I thought some parts of this conversation were really interesting, and so I might have to engage in it. Yeah, and I agree with you, Chad. I feel like sometimes the apologetics channels stay at sort of a shallow depth. It's that rhetoric and that philosophical realm, but it lacks poetry, and that's where I pull from sort of my classical literature tradition. I did my master's degree is in Christian classical studies, so dealing with theology through the ages and reading a lot of classical literature and how that informs people's idea of God. You see this in Socrates. He's trying to. There's a battle between philosophy and poetry. One of Socrates' great enemies was Aristophanes. Aristophanes wrote a play called The Clouds, in which he just mocks Socrates up one end and back the other. I mean, it is a hilarious comedy when you know Socrates. And he pictures Socrates in a basket suspended just in midair. And his idea is that the philosopher, and this is the poet, informing the polis, the people, about what the philosopher really does. And what he's telling us is that the philosopher just stays up in the clouds. He's in a basket. He's in the sky. He's in the air. He's in this ethereal realm. But he never touches the ground like the poets do. Because comedy, particularly, is very bodily. It makes you laugh at yourself, and so it sort of brings you down to the ground. And so this war between poetry and philosophy was going on in the Hellenistic world. I think Jesus models the sort of marriage between poetry and philosophy brilliantly. He's God incarnate, but he's also there's no war between poetry and philosophy in the person of Christ. I think that's what Plato was attempting to do as he writes about Socrates' dialogues. He's trying to say, well, there is a way that we can bring poetry and philosophy together. Unfortunately, I think we do apologetics from a modern. We've inherited sort of modern rationalism, sort of through this Enlightenment, and so we do apologetics with that same sort of spirit behind it, rather than doing, in my case, rather than trying to marriage poetry and philosophy. So oftentimes when I'm doing apologetics, I'm using narrative. I'm not just going for brute rhetoric and logic and philosophy, although those are ingredients within the story. And so I think we need to do more of that. And again, I agree with you. I think it can be shallow in some ways. Now, it can also be the gateway drug to good theology, as it was for me. I studied apologetics for years because when I came to Christ, I had so many questions. And apologetics was that people who were doing good apologetics, they were there to help me. And so I think it can be a good gateway drug to good theology. And so I think when I found this happening, now why is this part of me sort of analyzing my year and saying that this is maybe a part of a discouragement, is I feel like I have put in a lot of time and a lot of effort, and I love the fact that there's 1,200 people out there who have said, yeah, I'm with you, Pete. Let's do theology. Let's do strange theology. We're not afraid. We don't need. We're not afraid to show up on one of these Christian YouTube. Unsubscribe from these heretical Christian YouTube channels. We're not afraid. I will probably end up on this. It's The Beat by Alan Parr. When you search top Christian YouTube channels, it's fascinating what you find. Mostly, I mean, you'll find like, okay, this is best YouTubers, but that's from 7 years ago. Top Christian YouTubers you should subscribe to. That's from 2 years ago. These Christian YouTubers make marriage look like hell from 1 month ago. And then Aussie Dave, he's got one that's kind of positive. And then they just fall into like Christian YouTube you need to subscribe from. The Cult of Christian YouTube. Actually, I'm going to watch this video. I think that's fascinating. Proof that Mike Winger should be avoided. And it just like a lot of these channels calling out people with like bad theology. Christian YouTube channels, it's all in caps too. You shouldn't trust. Unsubscribe from these. And he has another one that's like safe Christian YouTube channels. And I'm just like going, wait, safe? Who said anything about safe? I mean, he's good, but he's not safe. Yeah, Christian YouTube, you shouldn't trust. Unsubscribe. Yeah, it's unfortunate that this is the world that we live in. And so, Jaden has made 31 videos, and like 6 of those, and again, I'm sorry, I'm just like obsessing about these things. And has, what is this? 100 times what is that? 10,000 times the subscribers. I don't know. I can't do math when I'm doing a live stream. I can't do math in general. Cool, man. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to chatting more. I'm sorry that I don't have this chat thing figured out. Yeah, poets. Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk more about that, definitely. So Chad and I are going to do a little collab on his channel. Let's see, we'll do a little shout out here. Okay, so Jaden Force, I'll get distracted here, but yeah, so you look at that and you go, oh, my thought was this. Of course, I'm doing the prep and I'm looking at a year of strange theology and I'm thinking about the sacrifice that my family even made, because I basically took on another part-time job to do this YouTube channel, and my family has been incredibly supportive of that, and I'm thankful for that. But I do feel like our family has had to sacrifice so that I could do this YouTube channel, and I feel like I've put in a lot of work, and I feel like I've gotten a lot. Like I said, hopefully you understand that I've been talking for an hour and 17 minutes, and 90% of that has been just overwhelmingly positive. And there's this one discouragement that showed up 5 days ago as I was prepping to do this live stream, where I unpack a year of doing this podcast, and this channel shows up. And again, I just have to think at the back of my mind that my battle is not against flesh and blood, but against these forces. And so I don't think it's an accident that this video popped up and caught my attention. And then, of course, I went down the rabbit hole to try to figure out what was going on and realized in the 5 days since I've found Jaden's channel, he has gained over 5,000 subscribers, mostly because of this video that's gotten set. I imagine, Jaden, if you ever want to hang out, I did tag Jaden in that community note. So if you do find this live stream, again, I hope it's encouraging. I think I would never discourage someone from making Christian content on YouTube. I think we need 100 million more channels just like yours that keep the message of the gospel moving forward in an area that is unfortunately filled with stuff like unsubscribe from these Christian YouTubers because they're heretics types of videos. And so it's funny, because look, this is what McDonald's does. So if you go to Shorts, Jaden, again, I do appreciate you, brother, and I hope you take this with a grain of salt. I do have a tendency to come across as being kind of gruff. I can be very straightforward. My tone, hopefully, is not very rough. I I'd never want to discourage you. And if you're hearing this and if it at all discourages you, please just stop the video now, because I hope that it can be an encouragement in this area of be aware of how the tool that you're using might be shaping you. And I think you are, because you seem like you would be a digital native. But you're clearly taking on the Daily Dose of Wisdom. The shorts are the same. The whole look is the same. And so this is what Burger King does to McDonald's, right? McDonald's spends all this, and I don't know if this is urban legend or what, but McDonald's spends a ton of resources in research and development to plan where they're going to build a McDonald's. And Burger King invests virtually nothing in that research and development. All they do is they find where McDonald's is being built and they build a McDonald's next door. And so, it works for Burger King. It works for, but there is a point for me where I was just like, oh yeah, kind of the air kind of got taken out of my sails there for a second. Yeah, it is bizarre what sticks, man. And I think, again, we don't want to be shaped by the tool. We want to shape the tool. And I've shared that doing this has been a transformative process, and I think that is good. But Chad, I think the risk is you sort of look at this channel like, okay, well, I need to start making videos like Jaden. So now we have Daily Dose of Wisdom taking content from Daily Wire, Jaden taking content from Daily Dose of Wisdom, Pete taking content from Jaden. And we're not. I think we could do better, right? That we could do better if I think we could sort of emulate Paul VanderKlay a little bit and just do what Paul does, man. And then let God sort it out. Because Paul wasn't out to be a YouTuber. He's not trying to be a YouTuber. He's just Paul VanderKlay, and I think, we could talk more, Chad, when we meet together, but, I would just think through, like, what are my goals? My whole point in coming on YouTube was because I felt called. That's it. And that's, and I prayed and I said, okay, God, like, my family's willing to do the sacrifice, willing to take on a job, but after a year, I'm going to have to think about it. I'm going to have to think, how do I move forward? And it's been really important. It's been really impactful. It's been really encouraging. And so I'm looking forward to this next year. It is just funny that, like, you can feel this a little bit, right? 31 videos and 15,000 subscribers, which it's fine. Chad and I are talking about how, like, you sort of build a community more than, subscribers doesn't necessarily indicate that you have community, right? I think there is something to that. I look at Russel Brand's channel and stuff like that, and you realize there is sort of community surrounding that. And so I should probably let's chat about the future. I've touched on this a little bit. I've touched on kind of the nature of Christian YouTube and why we want to change that. Jaden, I hope you do take this all with a grain of salt. I think you have good things to say. Looking forward to hearing more from you and your channel. But again, follow Christ as Lord. Don't follow anything else, and don't let the tool shape you away. Again, do make videos based off of what God has put on your heart. That would be my encouragement, and just be aware of that tendency that we all have, which is for me to go and basically create these types of videos that are, I don't know, I guess maybe clickbaity, or they perpetuate the disagreements, they perpetuate sort of argument. It is harder to build dialogue. That is a harder thing to do. It's easier to create. It's easier to sow derision than it is to foster unity. And so we have an opportunity, I think, to foster unity and do some good with this tool that we have been given. And so, what is the future of Strange Theology? I do want to do some apologetics. I will do. And part of finding Jaden's channel and sort of rediscovering Daily Dose of Wisdom is that I think I think that my channel is in a good place right now where I could start adding one or two, just little bit of seasoning of that apologetics content. I may do something in the members section because my channel, I guess, has that. I'm looking towards what to do with that. And so I could do an apologetics course because I've taught apologetics, and putting it in the membership section would be a way to, again, sort of foster good dialogue and discourage just people coming in to sow that derision that we were just talking about, sowing, just again, fostering kind of negativity. I love it when I don't mean that people need to come into my channel and agree with me, disagree, but say something, say something meaningful, say something substantive so that we can engage in dialogue. It's the people that come in and say, that sucked, that was dumb, that I'm just like, okay, I think I'm going to delete that comment because it's just, that comment is kind of dumb and doesn't help. But it's the people that come in, there have been people, I did a few videos that featured DMT. And so there's people coming in saying like, well, have you taken DMT? What gives you the right to talk about DMT? And I'm like, well, okay, the video that we were talking about is from a dialogue between Joe Rogan and Brian Muraresku, who wrote a book about DMT, who also hasn't done DMT. And Brian Muraresku speaks very openly about why he chose not to do DMT while he was writing the book. And so it's like, it's just this funny thing of like, okay, like, please, it's fine to disagree, but let's have a substantive conversation about it or a dialogue about it. So I might do some apologetic stuff. I will. Don't be surprised if you see that William Lane Craig. And it will be an experiment. That will be something that I experiment with just to see, am I right about this? Am I right about kind of how the YouTube algorithm treats these Christian channels? And so do I, and does YouTube kind of know where I fit, because again, I think in some ways my channel is a little bit too fringe for most of the sort of the Christian YouTube-y cult. But it's also far too Christian for the people who would be listening to Joe Rogan, maybe on a regular basis, even though I know a lot of Christians who listen to Joe Rogan. So my approach to apologetics is very different. And so I've shared with you guys in this live stream a little bit about my approach to apologetics and why it's different. And I can unpack that a little bit more. And I'm realizing, having found Jaden's channel, that maybe I do have something to lend to that conversation. And that's part of my approach here as well, is sometimes I listen to these podcasts and I don't have anything really to lend to the conversation. That was the Jordan Peterson, John Lennox conversation. I was like, this is a great interview between Jordan Peterson and John Lennox. I don't have anything to say, so I'm not going to make a video on it because I just don't have anything to say, and I don't want to add to the noise. I want to infuse meaning into this digital media space if I'm going to do anything, and not just add to the noise. So if I'm going to talk about apologetics, I'm going to probably do it different than maybe others would, because I sort of have a background in philosophy and rhetoric, but also that literary background. I want to do more interviews. I've reached out to a few people, and I've heard back from two that will be potential interviews for 2024. One is sort of in the area of sort of Michael Heiser adjacent, and the other is in the area of apologetics. And so that'll be interesting. I've also reached out to Paul VanderKlay, so we'll see where that goes. I'd love to spend more time with him. And actually, Chad, if you're still with me, it was your reaching out to Paul that made me, that pushed me over the edge. Because I had an email to Paul and I was like, you know what? I don't want to bug Paul. I kind of reached out to him a few months ago, and this would be redundant, and he's been really busy. And then Chad was like, I reached out to Paul and now we're having an interview. I'm like, okay, maybe that's a sign. Maybe that's a sign that I should send the interview, the email out to Paul. And so we'll see. And, again, he's very busy, and so I totally understand. But if you have any suggestions on people I should reach out to do an interview, I would love to do that. And again, I hover around the bridges of meaning Discord. I don't write a lot, but I do read the comments, and so I feel like I have gotten to know some people. But yeah, doing more interviews would be great, because again, this is a channel built around the belief that good dialogue is going to save humanity. Like I don't think I'm being hyperbolic there. Maybe I am. And I'll do regular live streams. So this has been a lot of fun. I didn't know. This is one of the things that I experimented with 2 months ago. So it comes at the tail end of this channel. I did not know what I was doing, particularly in that first live stream, but I find it to be very fun, and I do like engaging with you guys, and I am gonna fix my chat so that I can actually see you guys. I'm one chat behind. Okay, awesome, thank you. Hey, so Charlie's Little Corner, are you part of the Bridges of Meaning Discord? Is it Dana? I'll have to look that up. Thank you for that suggestion. Yeah, I like that, and I do like. My schedule doesn't always allow me to pop into the live streams that Paul does on Fridays, but I want to be involved in that more. The last one we were all hanging out, it was a lot of fun. In fact, that's how Chad and I connected. So let's see, Q&A style. Okay, I put down better thumbnails and better background. Okay, let me. Give me your feedback. Give me your feedback. Here's the thumbnails. Clearly, I need some help. I've engaged with a few of you guys on Twitter, mostly not working. I think I need to see if you can help me out with some. I want to do an AI. I have an idea for an AI thumbnail, and it would be Jordan Peterson and Francis Schaeffer chatting and playing chess together while sort of sipping on coffee or beer or something like that, while Joe Rogan looks on with like a excited face. And I want to see if an AI can paint me that picture of Jordan Peterson and Francis Schaeffer playing chess with Joe Rogan looking on, because I do think as I think about interlocutors, dialogue partners, as I listen to Jordan Peterson, I hear a lot of Schaeffer, and I kind of wish Schaeffer passed away a long time ago, but let's see. Yeah, so here, Freedom from Chaos and Tyranny with Jordan Peterson. I need to redo some of these thumbnails because that thumbnail is just not very good or clear, but you can see that in these two videos, I'm pulling a lot more from Schaeffer as we engage with some of Jordan Peterson's ideas. I do think that they have a lot of crossover, so I would love to get a thumbnail of Jordan Peterson and Francis Schaeffer playing chess. Okay, awesome. Okay, Grim Grizz. Okay, that's a good. I'll hit up Grim Grizz on his thumbnail. AI thumbnail. Prowess. And so you can use. There's a Discord. I forget what AI it is, but you got to do a monthly subscription. And so that's maybe something that I just need to invest in this channel. So let me know your feedback on the background here. I just have maps. I have maps, and I have two lights, which is a little bit awkward, but I need to paint that wall behind me or something if I'm going to keep my desk in this area. And so give me your feedback on that. Yeah, Midjourney, that's the one. Yeah, Midjourney is the one I was thinking of. But it's usually too busy for me to use the free version of it. Yeah, that's kind of where we are. Adding a little bit and doing more of the same. Doing the more of the same. It is funny that I feel like Joe Rogan has has decided not to interview anybody that's a Christian. Maybe he got some feedback from his whatever sponsors or something like that. But I would love to see, and actually, okay, so you see this Ruslan. I was just thinking Ruslan and some of these others, they have this petition to get William Lane Craig on Joe Rogan, and maybe I'll kind of end with these thoughts because we've been going for a while. But all of these sort of modern, again, this is kind of the modern approach, but they want William Lane Craig on there because William Lane Craig is a genius. I mean, he is just a legitimately very smart person, and does apologetics really, really well. And I don't think William Lane Craig is going to be a good fit for Joe Rogan because Joe Rogan's podcast is based on dialogue. It's based on good dialogue. It's not a debate podcast. And I think that John Lennox would be the person that we put. If I was to sign a petition, if I was to sign a petition, you can tell I've been talking too long. For any other Christians to be on Joe Rogan, of course, Michael Heiser would have been perfect because Michael Heiser is all into the alien and all that stuff that Joe Rogan is. John Lennox has a style of talking that is much more dialogue. His approach, though just as brilliant, I think, as William Lane Craig. He's a mathematician. He is just as brilliant as William Lane Craig. Maybe William Lane Craig has him on a few IQ points. I don't know. William Lane Craig he's a rhetorician. He's a debatist. He's a philosopher. John Lennox is a mathematician, and it would be interesting to see where maybe math and poetry sort of they're almost adjacent. They're almost like math can be seen as almost like an art form and a language, which of course poetry is, both of those things. So I think that John Lennox would be, if I'm going to sign a petition, let's get a petition going for John Lennox to get on Joe Rogan. He's very old, and so is William Lane Craig. But that's where I would go. I would like to see a Joe Rogan, John Lennox interview in 2024. And if you've ever listened to John Lennox, in fact, his debate, gosh, what was it? Maybe when I do apologetics, I'll do a debate with, I'll feature one of John Lennox's debates. But I just thought it was really, really good. Heiser would have been just an absolute gem on Joe Rogan. Yeah, putting Craig with, Charlie, I think you're right on. Putting Craig with Joe Rogan would be cringe because Craig, monothematic apologetics, that is a gem right there. You're right. And actually, when I look at this Ben Shapiro debate, and there's some good things in there. You see that William Lane Craig is trying to build a bridge to have this good debate with Ben Shapiro, and he does a really good job. He actually William Lane Craig confronts Ben Shapiro with the truth of Jesus, something like that. But he really does that. He really does pull the conversation into the sort of unescapable point of you have to decide what you're going to do with this person, Jesus, and the historical reliability of it. And if his resurrection is historically reliable, what does that say? That means that the God, Yahweh, has basically affirmed this person, Jesus. So if he's saying he's God, Ben, you gotta deal with that, and Ben sort of moves on and wants to say, well, you could do history and I could do history, and I don't think we'll agree on anything. But you're right. William Lane Craig, he just sort of captures the conversation and takes it off into this monologue. And you can tell actually, and he is getting a little bit older, when he kind of gets off script, his thinking is just not as sharp. But then when he gets on to his monologues, it's just so clear. I mean, he's obviously rehearsed this. He's obviously practiced. He's done years and years and years of this. In fact, it was William Lane Craig's debate with Anthony Flew that was actually really transformational in my life as an early Christian. It's a brilliant debate. And I think Anthony Flew was at a point in his life where he was almost humble enough to concede. And you see Flew sort of break down, and he this sort of flails through the rest of the dialogue. It's actually kind of sad. But after that debate, Anthony Flew gave up his atheism. He just said, you know what? It's this historical reliability of the resurrection of Jesus. See, and now I'm getting into apologetics, which I said I wouldn't do. But it's the historical reliability of the resurrection of Jesus that really caused Anthony Flew, and it was the debate with William Lane Craig where he lays that out, caused Anthony Flew to kind of say, I just cannot, in all honesty, I cannot be an atheist. There's something out there. Something happened. Something happened that morning where Jesus rose from the grave. And he just kind of said, I don't know what it is, but something. And it's not, my atheism cannot explain it. And so, man, I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes in the next year. I love that you guys came and hung out for a little bit. And maybe we will do longer live streams again. And I might change the time when I do a live stream. Wednesdays are usually my day off. So it's like random afternoon. Everybody's everybody's working. But if you do happen to see this video after the fact, thank you for being here through this whole thing. Find a podcast episode that you think a friend of yours would enjoy and share that with them. I was going to go into my top ones, but you can see it here. I have an A side and a B side playlist. The A side are 6 episodes that got the most views and watch time and stuff like. The B sides are the ones that like fell into the YouTube dungeon and nobody's watched them, but I thought they were good because I find conversations like this meaningful. So with that being said, thank you for hanging out, and I will again, be doing more. I'm going to take a little bit of a break here with because it's the New Year and Christmas and stuff like that, but I will be back in January. I think the next live stream will be that first week in January, and I'll probably post a few clips and things like that, shorter form content in the meantime. So I look forward to catching up with you guys next time.